What's good, homies? In this video, I want to give y'all a brief introduction to Monster Hunter Rise and how to play it without getting too overwhelmed. A lot of new players start playing the game and find themselves quickly confused with what to do. There are so many different systems and tutorials to go through, it's really hard to learn everything. There's just so much to learn. And me? Well, I have ADHD. Sometimes that makes it hard for me to get into video games. It's really easy for a game to overwhelm me, especially when it throws a ton of menus and text tutorials at me. Sometimes I just don't want to deal with all of that. I just want to get into the action and have fun. With Monster Hunter, it's okay to do that. That being said, it's still really important to learn a lot of these systems and features. You just don't have to learn them all at the same time. Hopefully with this video, I can help out other neurodivergent people like myself to just get into the game better. I really love this game and I'd hate for people to drop it just because they had a hard time at the start. I want to show you the bare minimum of what you need to understand to have fun with the game while still making good progress. Then later on, you can start to experiment with the different features at your own pace. Okay, so let's talk about weapons. The game starts you out with the starter weapon of each type. I really recommend going to the training area and trying all of them out. Keep in mind if some of them don't feel too great, that'll change as you learn more about the game and as you get more skills. Some weapons like the bowgun will change drastically as you have more armor skills available. If you're not sure what to go with, try out the sword and shield. It's a really beginner-friendly weapon that is a good combination of offense, defense, utility, and mobility. As for weapon crafting, we're going to focus on two things for now: attack power and sharpness. Attack power is pretty straightforward. The higher the number, the harder you hit. Generally speaking, for early game, you just want to keep raising this number. The other important stat is sharpness. This is a bar with a couple of different colors. Red is the lowest value. The further away you get from red, the better. Most weapons at the start will be in the yellow. Eventually you'll find weapons that have green as well. You want to try to get to green as soon as you can. How sharpness works is when you hit a monster, your sharpness of your weapon goes down. Eventually you'll have to resharpen it with your whetstone in the fight. The higher the color, the more damage you do and the less your attacks will bounce. So not only is it important to get to the higher colors like green or blue, you also want the bar to be as big as you can for those higher colors. That way you'll last in the higher colors for a longer amount of time. For weapons, it can be okay to go out of your way a little bit just to get an upgrade. Pretty much every weapon has higher tier versions that you'll be able to build once you get further into the game. Personally, I played through a lot of the game just going down the Kimura tree. I found both that and the ore tree to have a good amount of sharpness and attack power to use. Have fun trying out other weapons though. Especially when you get into things like the bows and the bowguns, a lot of weapons will have different effects that you can play around with. Explaining those in detail is a bit out of scope for this video, but let me know if you want me to make another video explaining that stuff. So let's get right into the armor. For this, we're going to focus on defense, and that's really important. That means we're going to ignore armor skills and elemental defense. Most of those won't help too much for now. My general advice for armor is try and always upgrade your armor when you're finding that you can craft new pieces that will give you about 6 to 10 points of defense. You won't notice much of a difference with numbers lower than that. Also, don't go out of your way to farm armor. As you progress through the game, you'll naturally get materials to craft new pieces. The only exception is if you're having a really hard time. In that case, it could be worth it to farm a little bit just to get some new armor pieces. In general, I'd say you should try to farm for new armor pieces over using the upgrade system. You'll be better off stockpiling armor spheres for now. They'll be a lot more helpful later on in high rank. The only time I'd say it's worth paying attention to armor skills is when you can craft multiple things that have similar amounts of defense. In that case, try to prioritize skills that will help you defensively. So that means things like defense boost, evade window, evade extender, stuff that helps with survivability. Free meal is a good one to look into because sometimes you'll get free potion uses. Once you get to high rank, that's when the game truly opens up and you can start to farm for the skills that you want. Okay, now let's talk about the buddy plaza. There are a lot of important features here, so let's talk about getting more buddies. For the sake of keeping this simple, I'm not going to worry too much about the buddy skills. There's a lot of depth to this system, and they can have a huge impact on your ability to fight monsters. But for the buddy plaza, that doesn't really matter as much. Basically, you use the buddy scout to buy more buddies. That means that when a new feature unlocks and you need a buddy for it, talk to this guy. For now, when you need a new buddy, just go to him and hire whoever has the highest level. The higher the level, the more the buddy can do. Now let's talk about the Argosy. If you played Monster Hunter World, this is essentially your farm. The Argosy functions for two things. For one, it's a great way to get items passively that you'd normally have to collect out in the field. Things like bugs, fish, and plants that you'll need for crafting both items and weapons. For the trader quest system, all you have to do is select a buddy and then select the material you want. The higher the buddy level, the better the buddy bargaining skills you can use with them. I'd say generally you just want to use the highest skill that you can have active. In the early game, I'd recommend stocking up a lot on herbs and honey. You'll be needing a lot of that for all of your potions. Later on in the game, there will be other items to look into like various traps and status effect items. And pretty much all of those materials you can find right here. For the gunners, the Argosy is also a great place to get ammo plants. When you start off, you only have one slot for the Argosy. As you progress, you'll eventually unlock quests that'll give you more submarines. You pretty much always want to have a buddy out getting something for you. So let's talk about eating Dango. Dango's pretty simple. You pick the flavors you want, each flavor will give you a different buff. No matter which buffs you choose, you'll get a flat amount of bonus health and stamina at the start of your quest. This means that you should always be eating before a hunt. As far as flavors go, it's up to you to kind of play around and experiment with different ones. The skill buffs aren't guaranteed. Each flavor will tell you the chance of getting that buff. Fortunately, a lot of the buffs in the early game have a really high chance of activation. I'd recommend looking at things like Medic and Defender because those can really help you to stay alive. In my opinion, try not to spend too much money buying items. You should be getting more than enough just finding them out in the wild. Collect all the herbs and honey that you can. That being said, if you're really running low and you don't feel like going out on expeditions, you can feel free to buy a couple of potions. Antidotes also help out a lot. Besides that, the merchant also has the melding area. I want you to pretty much avoid melding for now. It's not really worth doing until endgame, so you can worry about that later. So it can be really helpful to look through all the options to see what you can change. The game has a lot that you can customize. One change that I really recommend is increasing your camera distance to the max. This will help you to see a lot more in fights. Personally, I find that the default camera is just a little too close. Another thing I need to show you is how to use your detailed map. This map is really important whether you're starting a quest and trying to find spirit birds before a hunt to raise your stats, or just because you're going on an expedition to farm materials like ore. This process can be pretty annoying because you have to keep opening the full screen map to view all the nearby interactables like this. Luckily, there's a better way. So head into your options like this, and then you're going to want to go to game settings and go to HUD map type. Change this from general map to detailed map. Now, you'll see a much smaller version of the map that will show you your selected map category as you walk around. You see all the gathering points near me? So this minimap will show you whatever's selected and you can use the full-size map to change that category. So if I go here and change it to endemic life, now it's changed to endemic life on the minimap as well. This should make your hunts a lot easier. And if you ever get lost, you can always use the left bumper to bring the full-size map back up if you want to check that. Thanks a lot if you made it this far. Let's do a quick summary of what we covered. There are a couple of topics that I left out on purpose because they honestly deserve a video specifically focused on them, like rampages and mercenaries. We went over weapons and how you should focus on attack and sharpness. We talked about armor and how you should focus on defense while ignoring skills and resistances for now. We talked about how to use the buddy scout to set up trade requests with the Argosy. And then there are Dangos and how to choose which one to eat before each hunt, followed by the shop and melding system and how to approach both of those. And lastly, I gave you suggestions about some of the options that you should play with. Hopefully this has given you a great foundation to start Monster Hunter Rise with. Don't forget that this is meant to get you off the ground quickly so that you can have a good time without getting too overwhelmed. Eventually, you will want to learn a lot of these systems more in depth. Let me know in the comments if you'd like me to make more detailed explanation videos, and don't forget to subscribe as well. I appreciate all of the support that y'all have been giving me, and I hope that you can enjoy this game as much as I have. Take care, homies.